Welcome to today's webinar entitled Secure and Simplify Your ITS Network. Now, why are we having a webinar with both Moxa and Econolite? Well, because in the second half of 2025, Moxa and Econolite entered into an agreement, and Econolite is now the premier supplier of Moxa equipment for the ITS market nationwide. So we've got some great collaboration going on, and as you think about it, they've had Econolite has all of these solutions that go into a traffic cabinet, all these line items that fit into a cabinet and become part of the signaling solution. And now they've added to their line card, they've added the networking piece of it. So that sort of, increases the dynamics of everything. And when we start talking about cybersecurity and such, it opens that up a little bit more and makes that a little bit more complex. So today's session, which is called Secure and Simplify Your ITS Network, it's going to revolve around ITS networking, cybersecurity, and then of course operational reliability. And really, it's going to focus on how transportation agencies can build secure, resilient, and scalable networks as these systems become more connected and more complex. So we're going to be talking, of course, about the cabinet. And then, remember, those cabinets are now all getting networked together, right? Or perhaps they're being accessed with secure remote access. So that's really what this is going to be all about. And we're going to just give you some practical guidance, some real world examples, and hopefully some proven approaches. So with that said, I would like to introduce today's speakers. First, we've got Kent Regay with Econolite. He is the senior product manager for their controllers. He's got 20 years of experience in component, hardware, and design engineering. He has led product development planning and project scheduling, including connected vehicle initiatives. He supports connected vehicle business development and customer programs. And then also voting member representatives of ATC 5301 and 2 ITS cabinet working groups. And then following that, we've got Marty Wachi. Marty is the product marketing manager at Moxa for the networking product line, as well as the cybersecurity features and requirements that we all have to deal with. Marty comes to us from 20 years of experience at Apple Computer, Bay Networks, Nortel Networks, D-Link Systems, and Cisco. And if any of you are as old as me, you recognize all of those networking names in there. So he led product marketing and product management teams. He's launched 1,200 products worldwide, including routers, switches, wireless access points, NAS, IP video surveillance, IP telephony, XDSL gateways, cellular routers, UTM security appliances, and cloud management systems. So that's quite an extensive resume there. And before we get started with these two, let's just quickly go over some housekeeping. The duration of this is expected to go about 60 minutes. Could be a little less, but we won't push it over 60. If you do have questions, please use the Zoom Q&A to ask the question. I will be keeping an eye out. Please keep an eye out for poll questions. We will be polling you as we go through the webinar. This recording, it will be shared after the webinar. And then, of course, we would like to have you tell us how we did in a survey that we're going to provide. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kent and turn off my camera.
All right. Thank you, Michael. So for today, we will be going over 3 major topics and diving into a little bit of deeper detail as we go. First, we're going to look at ITS cybersecurity threat vectors, as well as the standard that applies and kind of covers both cyber and physical security. Then we will go into the practice what we call defense in depth. That's the physical security as well as the local access. And then finally, Marty will go over the defense in depth aspect of network security, both communications and systems. All right. So first off, we are going to talk about defense in depth. In general, this is the practice or the actual defense in depth in practice. You can consider it kind of like the circular diagram you see here. So When we secure the ITS network, you can kind of consider this a layered strategy. Defense in depth basically is layered such that it encompasses all aspects of security. So it's not just about the communications or compute side of security. It also includes and does not forget the physical aspects of security, which will be fundamental. You'll see that in the reference architecture later on. So when we practice defense in depth, it's kind of best to consider it a continuous process. The threat environment is non-static. It's constantly evolving. You're always going to have to worry about bad actors or intruders looking and continuously searching for exploits or ways inside of a network and to reach your critical infrastructure devices. Now, starting with the first highlighted step you see here, threat and risk modeling for defense in depth. This is the identification phase. This is where we look at what kinds of threats, intruders, or bad actors can exploit on your network infrastructure, and what risk these threats pose. Does it simply block out access to your equipment? Does it actually produce adverse behavior? Let's say, modifying the way traffic signal lights are being driven, such that it causes major disruptions to the infrastructure, to the motoring public. And that's kind of what we will look at, in terms of the threats that these bad actors pose and these exploits pose to the network if it ever gets compromised. Then we look at the second phase, right? This is the planning, processes, and vigilance phase. Once we identify threat vectors, we can start looking into mitigation steps, and which we'll highlight a little bit later. But it's basically, if you know that, part of the ship could leak, how do you preemptively plug the leak, right? And finally, we get into the practice, or we get into the actual practice of action, the third phase, which is restricting, auditing, and the alerts in this action phase. So in general terms, these are the actions that we take to block or stop the threats we identified through planning. You check for, when we take these actions, we check, once we take these restrictions, we check that the actions are effective. That's the auditing part. Constantly looking to see if it's, if we are being attacked or being probed. We then send alerts if we are compromised or even if we are still being probed. So we actually maintain a surveillance standpoint when we look at the risks and the threats and risks that are pointed at our ITS networks. And as mentioned, this is a constantly evolving threat environment. So this process doesn't just stop at restricting, auditing, and alerts. We actually do go back and look at new threats and new risks that constantly introduce themselves into our industry and our environment. As as traffic networks become more connected, they do expose themselves to more risks and more threats. So this is kind of why all this is very important. All right. Next up. All right. This is the reference architecture for our defense in depth analysis. And this architecture is based off of a reference standard that is called NEMA 40008. This is the cyber and physical security for ITS, or intelligent transportation system standard. So a lot of you in our field and industry would know NEMA. That's the National Electrical Manufacturers Association. NEMA has been prolific in our industry for the longest time, since the very beginning. And it has been the foundation of the standards that define a lot of our ITS traffic equipment today. And as one of our major standards bodies, it has also evolved to both tackle and standardize how we approach cybersecurity in our industry. So there are also other standards that are evolving and forthcoming that are worth mentioning, including ATC 5501. This primarily focuses on cybersecurity on the controller side, but this is built off of the NEMA standard here as a foundational standard. This was previously known as NEMA TS8, if those of you who've looked at this or looked into this before. And but one of the things that carried over from the original standard is the visual reference architecture that we're showing here. So this is a very foundational and pyramid that we're actually going to build on as we continue through this presentation. All right. So we will start with physical security. Actually, before we start with physical security, we'll go through some of the highlighted recommendations from NEMA 40008, starting with, of course, protecting the equipment behind physical locks. So if you recall, at the very bottom of that pyramid, we're looking at physical security. So, this could be this is effectively the very first point of entry that a bad actor could use to compromise the network, if not outright just steal the equipment. So starting with physical security, we will actually get into a little further detail on this mitigation step, but it starts as simple as physically locking the premises or the equipment. At the next step here, we have implementing good passwords and leaving no default passwords in your equipment. So those of you who have worked with our equipment, both Econolite and Moxa, you might already know what the default passwords are for both of our web interfaces and our controller interfaces. We're not going to take that away from you, but your best practice is to always set your own passwords and don't share it with anybody outside of your organization. So this does apply to all communicable devices on the ITS network. So small things like load switches probably don't count, but things like an MMU, the Moxa switch, and the Econolite Cobalt controller do count. And what is a good password? Well, good passwords are passwords, say, with decent character lengths. Complex characters, including upper and lowercase, numbers, special characters. These are the kinds of things that you probably already have to do and work with on your computer equipment. Maybe it's IT policy, but it is something that you really are, really is highly recommended that you exercise. Next up, we have secure communications only. This means communications equipment and protocols. So both tangible and non-tangible security aspects here for communications. I mean, anecdotally, not too long ago, out in the field, we used to have traffic equipment that would use non-secure protocols like Telnet and FTP, or file transfer protocol. As the threat environment had evolved, these old protocols were deprecated and replaced with more secure methods like SSH, or secure shell, or SFTP, which is secure FTP. So even as we've evolved into these newer secure communications protocols, these are also always constantly under threat, and are subject to updates and revisions. All right, and finally, we will talk about, and we also mentioned enabling only what is necessary. So this is the idea of, say, when you secure a house, you can't break into a window if there's no window. So this includes closing up unnecessary open and vulnerable ports on a network, for example. All right, now we will dive into physical security. So this will be the foundation on the next slide. Thank you. So in physical security, well, when we talk about the premises for the ITS network, in the field, it always starts at the traffic cabinet. This is what lives at the intersection, and despite maybe looking a little bit innocuous out in an intersection, this is, there are multiple traffic cabinets in your network, in your field, multiple nodes and multiple points of entry. So what is the first threat vector and point of entry we look at a traffic cabinet? Well, it's the front door if it's a NEMA cabinet, and then possibly the rear door on a 33X style cabinet. And well, what's your first mitigation step? As we mentioned earlier, is cabinet keys. The good thing about cabinet keys is that there's always a lock assembly attached to every traffic cabinet. The bad news is the number 2 key is very standard, so you will actually, it's not really hard for anybody to be able to replicate the key. So custom keying, of course, is one way to mitigate that point of entry. The other is, of course, to padlock the door so you don't have immediate access. But those kinds of steps kind of take you only so far. Of course, keys, locks can be picked and padlocks can be broken off. Uh, so what we are seeing further in our field is the aspect of a smart locking mechanism or smart key. So this is kind of like, you'll have it in a lot of secure buildings. This kind of technology has proliferated into the ITS field equipment side. So things like cyber locks, programmable keys have now been, I'm starting to see actually quite a few customers that are starting to adopt and use this in a lot of their projects and deployments. All right, next up. This is kind of a jump from the physical security all the way up to the central security aspect, which is at the top of the pyramid. But on top of being able to just lock your equipment and make sure, that nobody can just easily open a cabinet door and plug into the network or compromise any of the devices. This We also provide the ability to set alarms on our equipment. So this is uh, you know, this is on the central system side at Econolite. This is the door alarm event that we can actually program in both Centrax and Centrax Mobility, and it basically allows the cabinet to inform you, the operator owner, whenever the doors have been opened on any of your equipment. Of course, if you have planned maintenance or this is scheduled and expected, you of course can always disregard the alarms. But for the times that doors are opened, you can always, escalate. And for how long those doors have been open, you can both inform and escalate your operators uh, if the door has been left open for too long. All right. Next up as we progress up the pyramid, we are now at the local access stage of the reference architecture. So if physical security has been, I guess, breached at the cabinet or at the field level, what are the first things that a bad actor or intruder might look at? First things could be the open Ethernet switches. That's definitely a common point of a very easily identifiable point of entry. But they'll also look for devices that have a user interface or basically the most front-facing and profound entry point could be the traffic controller itself. So, they'll see our traffic controllers, our Econolite Cobalt controller, has a very nice big 7-inch touchscreen and a keypad interface. So, aside from, learning, one of the pros and cons of having an intuitive, user-friendly interface on the controller is it also makes it, accessible, easily accessible for a bad actor to get into and get into the ropes of. So we start by looking at that point of entry. And then of course, in all of our modern Cobalt controllers, we provide our EOS traffic control software. This will be the actual application that runs on the hardware. Now, in EOS, for our EOS software package, we both include the traffic application and the operating system. So the obvious mitigation that has to happen on our part is we offer both security at the operating system level and at the application level. At the operational software or the operating system level, we actually provide means to both start with all of the vulnerable ports and unnecessary ports turned off. So we can actually start with SSH turned off and SFTP turned off. We can disable the console port on the front panel of the controller. So if a bad actor or intruder actually has a means to get into the serial port and try to hack or password crack the controller, they don't exactly have the immediate means to do so. And then at the application level, just like we talked about best practices for passwords, we do have EOS security settings. We have a uh, decent length of passcodes, actually, because one thing you'll notice about the controller, it's primarily a numeric keypad system. So we actually do only use passcodes. However, we provide a passcode length from 8 to 16 characters, and we provide a lot of tunability in terms of how many attempts can somebody take at cracking a password before you lock them out. And likewise, we have various user account level settings and account access control lists and privileges that allow you to uh, determine, even if you aren't allowed to be on this controller or access this controller, what you're allowed to change and compromise in case the user itself gets compromised. All right. And with that, that is a lot of what I have to cover for both physical and local access. So I will hand off the communication security aspect of defense in depth to Marty.
Hey, thanks, Kent. So I think it kind of goes without saying that, doing the part of the pyramid, the physical security, local access is super important because if you don't have that part secured, the part that we're going to talk about now kind of doesn't matter as much. So we're going to focus primarily on the communication security piece, the networking piece, touch a little bit on the central management. We'll touch more on the central management piece in the follow-on webinar that we'll have coming up, talking about serviceability for these networks. So let's start kind of with our first poll question and kind of have that pop up for you guys, asking kind of at what level could you use the most help from Econolite and Moxa to help secure your ITS network? You can pick any and all of these. Just trying to get a feel for kind of the pain points for the folks on the call. We'll pop that up here for just a few more seconds. Okay. Why don't we go ahead and show everybody the results? Looks here like some of the top layer parts of the pyramid are where we've got kind of some of the most interest. Again, I'd say the central system part of it, I think we're going to cover a little bit more in the follow-on webinar. So let's keep going here. And if at any time you guys have any questions about like what we're going to be sharing with you guys today, feel free to drop a question in the Q&A, or we can follow up with you because a lot of these topics are pretty complicated. So let's keep going here. Okay, so let's talk real quickly on why a firewall is important. And some of this is really just to create a baseline of, you guys probably have a lot of these different devices in your network. So what's the difference between a switch versus a router or firewall? So a switch basically connects devices to form networks. So connecting, all the different devices in your cabinet, connecting a bunch of cabinets together. And then you usually have routers and firewalls to connect those networks and protect those networks. But then some of the more advanced firewalls have advanced threat protection, like we'll talk a little bit about today, the intrusion detection and prevention, which allows you at the application level to see like what's going on your network to prevent some of those malware, ransomware, worms, other attacks that are at the application level. So if you only had switches as an example, you wouldn't be able to see this. And I'll show you an example of kind of using Amazon as an example of kind of what the differences are. One of the things I like to talk about, and I've followed for a number of years with respect to security, is IBM's cost of a data breach report. And the two things I think I'd like to focus on today is supply chain, which you can see here is the second highest attack vector behind phishing, based on it being up 3 points from the previous year. It's trending to actually be the #1 attack vector. So what this means is it's really all of your suppliers, and your device or solution is compromised before you even get it. So making sure that you have vendors that have a secure supply chain is important. Obviously, when you look at the root cause of attacks in this section here, over half of the attacks are still that, frontal assault kind of malicious or criminal attack. What's surprising is the human error piece of being 26%, almost a third of it. This will really be addressed with some of the network management and the serviceability piece. So we're going to focus more on the malicious or criminal section, which is that 51%. So Moxa, as a equipment manufacturer, we play in a lot of different verticals. And the takeaway from this chart here is these are the security frameworks for all the different industrial verticals, from energy to oil and gas to transportation to marine to semiconductor, industrial automation, that Moxa plays in. So we're familiar with all of these. 62443, the one in red, is the one that Moxa focuses on because it kind of has the broadest impact. But the takeaway from this visual here is really looking at kind of this lower right-hand section here. With the exception of semiconductor with E186 and 187, most of the frameworks don't really focus on this section very much. Interestingly enough, the two areas that this represents is supply chain and network management. And if you remember, those were kind of two of the things that IBM was highlighting in the previous slide, supply chain and human error being some of the biggest attack vectors for and root causes for a lot of these criminals. So this is something to pay attention to. So when you look at Moxa and what we're doing from a networking perspective, so we have a secure development supply chain model that's 62443-4-1 certified, which means we have secure development lifecycle. Doesn't mean that our lifecycle or can't be hacked, but it does mean we have all of our suppliers have passed the certification. We do have steps in place to mitigate any types of issues that happen there. Then you've got the product, which we're going to talk a lot about today, and just the implementation here from the managed switches, firewalls, things like that. And then the secure management, which addresses the human error piece, which we'll talk more about in the next webinar that we're going to be doing. So keep an eye out for that. And then obviously what you do on the back end, support advisories and having a lot of education and partner programs, doing things like we're doing today with Econolite. So from a networking perspective, it's super important to understand, where does Moxa fit into like the overall picture? And as Michael mentioned, I spent a lot of time at Cisco, so I feel pretty qualified to speak to this. In general, the solutions that we're talking about for ITS and just OT in general, 99.9% of the time, the firewalls will never compete directly with a Cisco, Fortinet, or Palo Alto. If this were a test, the question would be, make sure that you understand that this is really a complementary type of solution. We're not trying to replace what the IT guys are doing. We talked a little bit earlier about kind of the differences between a managed versus a firewall type product. And this is just kind of an ITS infographic. Basically, the managed switch only sees kind of the packet content of the Ethernet frame versus the firewall actually can see all the payload and context. And there's some examples here of ITS specific types of attacks that are those payload types of attacks that without a firewall, you can't block and you can't see. So kind of the simplified version of this is I like to use Amazon as an example. So I think everybody on the call probably has gotten an Amazon package before. So when that package arrives at your house and it's to Marty from Amazon, that's basically what the managed switch can see. Some of the managed switches may be able to peek inside of that package and see it looks like there's a shoebox inside there, but they can't really see if inside that shoebox is really shoes or if it's malware. So what these next generation firewalls and the solutions that we're talking about can do, they can actually go in, open that box up, see that Marty's wife ordered another pair of black high heel 6 pumps. It's her like 100th pair. She doesn't need any more, so we're going to block it. Right. And if I could actually do this, I wouldn't be here speaking anymore. I'd be retired and rich. But that's kind of the layperson's example of how this works. And what you really, the takeaway here is you really need to be able to see and inspect everything that's coming into your home and verify that it is actually from Amazon. It actually is shoes and it's actually what you ordered, not just some boxes that could have, some unwanted surprises. So what we're doing with this is we're really proposing taking this traditional defense in depth architecture and creating an architecture where you're pushing some of that firewall visibility out to the edge of the network. And we're seeing a lot of customers. It started kind of 2 years ago with the Halliburton attack. Ever since the conflict in Iran started, there's a lot more attacks going on, from nation states trying to probe our infrastructure. So having these things in place make a big difference. So how does that apply to ITS? So this is kind of a good, better, best architecture of what we see today, where it starts with having that managed layer 2 switch, giving you that defense in depth, that basic protection that Kent talked about, maybe moving to that switch plus some type of router or cellular, type of function. But then the best is really having maybe some of like our all-in-one solutions that incorporate switch, firewall, and next generation firewall so that you can see and peek inside those shoe boxes and make sure that Marty's wife actually got a pair of shoes. Another example for you guys is just architecturally what we can do with some of these products and with some of these firewalls that have up to 10 gig layer 2 support. Whether it's a ring architecture, 1 gig, 2.5 gig, or 10 gig, a lot of scalability there. For a lot of you guys with the control cabinets, a lot of those daisy chain architectures, this gives you a much deeper pipeline for data so you can connect and interconnect more of these cabinets at various speeds and uplinking them at higher speeds to some of that 10 gig capability. So if we look at kind of our portfolio, and again, I know I'm going kind of fast through this. If anybody has any questions about any of the specific slides, go ahead and drop a comment in the Q&A section. So this is our managed switch portfolio. We've got 3 levels of managed switches, going from some of our older entry-level switches to some of our traditional managed switches to our new next generation DIN rail and fully rack mounted switches that have a lot of new very sophisticated segmentation security capabilities. We have a pretty vast industrial wireless portfolio from Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6 products, Wi-Fi 7 coming out next year, to public cellular, to private cellular, for a lot of different access for those cabinets. And then we have a whole family of firewalls of various different sizes, speeds, price points. You've got all-in-ones like the EDR 8010 and 9010 versus dedicated firewalls like the EDR, as well as like the EDF, which is a dedicated transparent bridge firewall, as well as some NAT products that also have some basic firewall capabilities. All of these products from Moxa are fully managed by our management software and the different tools that we have. We'll go through this more in the serviceability section in the next webinar, but this just gives you an idea of, for different life cycles, we have different tools. It's also worth mentioning for any of the folks that are working with IT, a lot of those vendors from Fortinet, Cisco, Palo Alto, and others, they have a lot of subscriptions built into their model, which makes trying to push these firewalls to the edge a lot more costly and maybe not as OpEx, CapEx optimized. The Moxa products, basically, you have a 5-year warranty with support, with software support. All of the network management's perpetual license, which means you just buy it once. The only subscription that we have, just like the other security guys, is the IDS, IPS licenses to be able to do that deep packet inspection and make sure that those high heels are actually, what's being delivered to your house. So this is a really big economic advantage that we have when it comes to cost of ownership over 5-10 years. So with that, that brings me to kind of a next poll question about what technologies you might be interested in learning more about. We went through a lot of different things here that we didn't get a chance to go in a lot of detail on. So from our managed switch portfolio to our industrial wireless to our networking and security, industrial compute network management, what are some things that you guys might be interested in either learning more about or getting some more follow-up webinars like this? So let's just give you a minute or two to answer that here real quick. Let's see some of the answers coming in. Interesting. Looks like it's really focused towards Looks like firewalls just kind of took the lead here from network management, industrial computers, managed switching. Okay, good. So it looks like we're kind of got a broad range of folks here. Not too much interest in industrial wireless. Okay, so let's go ahead and close the poll here. Maybe put it up here for folks to be able to see. So obviously the firewalls are the most interest to people. We'll cover that in some more detail also in the next presentation, but we'll talk a little bit about some ways that you can learn more about that and a lot of these tools. So thank you there. All right, so let's keep going here. Okay, so just a real quick plug. If any of you are going to ITS America, be sure to visit the Econolite booth, that booth 4001. Check out some of their leading solutions, integrating, and maximizing efficiency, safety, and remote access using some of the Moxa secure remote access solutions. So definitely go check that out. I think Michael is going to be there as well. So Moxa and Econolite will be there. For those of you that were looking for some more information, so we know that this is a tough topic. So Moxa has created a series of what we call solution days. These can be done virtually or in person, where we can focus a lot more time and attention, not just on the technology, but your specific use case. We'll do kind of a pre-call with you to understand kind of like what some of your pain points are, and then tailor, an hour or two session with you guys specifically to go and understand a little bit better how our technology and Econolite might be able to help you with some of these pain points that you mentioned, whether it's firewall, network management, um, or any of the technology solutions. So this is something that if you're interested in, definitely, drop a comment in the Q&A, or definitely you can scan the QR code here and sign up on the website. Okay. So as far as would anybody like to be contacted with some follow-up? So whether it's Solution Day, more information about ITS America, more details on network management, or more details on the firewall. I know those were some pretty big comments, or you've got a project. This is an opportunity. Just click on this and we'll make sure that the Econolite Moxa team follows up with you to get you that information, get you some more detail there. So definitely let us know there. We'll give you just another couple seconds to answer that. But yeah, definitely take advantage. We got a lot of expertise between Econolite and Moxa, so definitely take advantage of these experts. All right. Thank you guys for the response there. Let's kind of wrap it up here with kind of a summary. So as Kent mentioned in his section, the importance of really a strong physical and secure foundation. Can't stress it enough. You can put all these advanced firewalls and technology from Moxa, but if you don't do some of that basic blocking and tackling that Kent was talking about, it's kind of all for naught, because they can just walk up and reset devices, unplug these things. So having that first layer of protection is super important, and that's not something that Moxa does. So Econolite bringing that expertise to this equation is super valuable. Where we can help is obviously securing the communications. We've got these advanced firewalls. We've got the network management. It is actually a lot easier than on the IT side. It is kind of daunting given just the task at hand, but this is something I think that we definitely can help you with. And then we do have the centralized systems and tools. Kent talked about a little bit for his section. We touched on it briefly for ours. The serviceability webinar, that's kind of a follow-on for this. We'll kind of go into more detail on some of that stuff. And several of you had some questions about the network management pieces for both Kent's and mine. So that'll be a good resource for you guys. So with that, let's bring back Michael and Kent, and let's open it up for Q&A. So if anybody out there has any additional questions, anything that you want to make sure we get answered before we wrap up today's session, just drop it in the Q&A. With that, Michael, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thanks, Marty. Well done, thanks. Yeah, please submit any questions that you've got, and thanks to Kent as well. That's you guys have a lot of experience in your respective areas, that's for sure. Okay, here's one. Is there a charge for a solution day?
All right, so I can take that one. So the solution days are completely free. We probably should charge for some of it, but no, we don't charge for the solution days. You've got access to a lot of experts. Moxa has actually on staff a 62443 training specialist, Felipe Costa. He's not here, but he's like one of 10 instructors worldwide that can speak to 62443 and actually does training for them, paid training. So he's definitely a resource if you're interested in that. But no, these are completely free. So definitely sign up, use and abuse us.
All right. Thanks. And then I'm not sure whether to direct this at Marty or Kent or both of you, but there's a lot to digest here, and frankly, it's a bit overwhelming. Where should we start?
And you want to maybe start with like on your side and I can take the network?
Yeah. So if you are looking for more information, don't hesitate to contact either us directly at Econolite or any of our channel partners and distributors for the physical and local access level types of questions if you're curious about those. And then for you, Marty?
Yeah, so for networking, kind of a similar answer. Definitely reach out to your channel partners. You can also reach out to us directly. Kent and the team will, get in touch with us and pull us in. But we're definitely able to field those directly as well and get you access to our FAE resources. So I think the big thing is just reach out to us, and we'll figure out who it needs to get your question answered between the Econolite folks and Moxa. I mean, we don't know much about cabinets and locks, so we would definitely have to get the Econolite people involved with those kinds of things.
Great, thanks. All right, we got one more here. I really like this one. So, Marty, we already use managed switches, VLANs, and port-based security. Do we still need a firewall?
So this is a great question. And again, if I had like $1 for every time this came up, I wouldn't be here presenting anymore. So the answer is yes. I mean, I think the glass is half full is, definitely for whoever asked that question, you should definitely, be happy with the fact that you've got your kind of basic security in place. So when you have that managed switch with the VLANs, ACLs, basically what you've done is you've set up that perimeter containment zone, right? So think of it as maybe you've set up an electric fence, right? Or some type of fence around whatever you're trying to protect. But what the firewall does on top of that, it gives you kind of that video surveillance aspect as well as armed response from like ADT, right? So not only can I see when somebody jumps over the fence and gets past the VLAN or the ACL, but I actually can do something and act upon it. So the firewall gives you that active response and active visualization that you don't get with kind of a passive switch. So I know probably a lot of folks on the call have already implemented switching, and that's great. But again, we're seeing that that's probably not enough in 2026 with all the threats. So definitely should be looking at trying to enhance that with firewalls. Like I said, it's like adding video surveillance and ADT response, to your already secure solution. So great question.
Yeah, that was great. And I think we got one more here that I think complements that one nicely is given that IT has already deployed a central firewall, what is the need for additional security measures with regard to the firewall?
So another great question. So if you think about it, let's use the security camera example again. So where the typical firewalls are located is at the perimeter of where the IT and OT network meet. So at that section, we've got cameras on that part of the network, right? But then as you get further away to the very edges, you think where these control cabinets are deployed, it gets further and further away from that camera, and I can't see what's going on. If I can't see what's going on, I can't, respond to the threat. So by adding more firewalls to the perimeter, it's like adding more security cameras that can see what's going on. And then also, like I said, adding that kind of ADT response so that when you see somebody, get past your first level of defense, that you can do something about it. Because if you just have that one camera, they can wander around your whole infrastructure for a long time before they just happen to pass by where that one camera is. So it's really about getting more visibility and getting the ability to respond to those threats. So definitely need more firewalls.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's all I've got. Are there any more words of wisdom from Marty or Kent on this one?
Kent, any closing comments from you?
Well, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for your time and attention. Hopefully, this has been an enlightening topic for you guys to explore and learn about. So, we appreciate your attendance.
Yeah, just echo that. Thank you guys. Appreciate the questions, especially those people that, are looking for follow-up. We'll definitely, between Mox and Econolite, make sure that we follow up with you guys on those questions and see if we can help you out. So thank you. And Mike,
Definitely. Thank you very much.
thanks for
Oh,
hosting.
you're welcome, and thanks to James for the quick intro there. But I do want to again thank Kent and Marty, and also want a reminder that this is being recorded. We will be sending out a recording link, and if you could, there will be a post-webinar survey. We would really appreciate any feedback that you've got for us on that. We do plan another collaboration webinar later this year, so keep an eye out for that. We'll be sending out the invites for it. And lastly, really hope to see you all at ITS America, booth 4001. So thanks, everybody.